I'd like to ask you a few questions about your background, about your feelings about bioenergetics, and anything that you'd care to share with the bioenergetic community and hopefully people who are interested to join the bioenergetic community.
Absolutely.
No, and I'd like to bring you up to date more still on the foundation and the publishing work.
I would love to hear what's happening in the foundation, yes.
Because it does continue to evolve.
I am happy, hallelujah.
Yeah. No, it's a good thing, not only for the community, but for the world at large.
I second the world at large. I think it's important for the world.
I've come to think
I'm prejudiced.
I've come to think of the bioenergetics as the world's best kept secret.
I think of the world knowing all about bioenergetics because they needed to live and survive.
That's right. And the foundation recognizes that, the value of the bioenergetics is not only in psychotherapy, but it also informs us as to what real positive living is really about. And I'm still trying to define that for myself. So it's clear to me.
I could add a lot in there because not a lot. There's one major thing, and that is the body. The body. It's not just awareness, because that's a mental thing. It's really the body and getting in touch with your own body and feeling yourself. That's what you really put out to the world, is yourself. But you can't do that until you own it. And that's the gift of bioenergetics. It's so wonderful. I'm very prejudiced. What could I say?
Yeah. I see really bioenergetics as being the path towards freedom.
That's a nice way to say it. I like that.
Yeah,
freedom of the inhibitions of the world and all the conditioning that you experience and all that. Yes, that's a good way to say it.
Well, I think you have to be free in your body to be truly free in other ways.
True. Yes.
You have to be free of the fear and free of the shackles, as Dad would call it. When you get to know your body, oftentimes you recognize that your body isn't just frozen, but it's literally shackled by the musculature. And the bioenergetics work really helps to soften that.
Absolutely, 100%.
That's
its gift.
And to allow the energy to flow. And only when people feel that can they really be free, not only in themselves, but also free as a people. Free from fear or free from social sort of, I don't know how best to put it. Because, by and large, I got to say, my own belief is that technology has been a big problem for us. I would say so. Well, yeah, basically it's my feeling that in the last 30 years we've had an explosion of technology, but we've simultaneously had an explosion of social problems that are unprecedented and potentially terminal.
What's terminal?
Well, I mean that,
bioenergetics wouldn't exist if there was just that kind of termination.
Well, my concern is that we may not survive our intelligent mind. We're not smart enough to manage the intelligence that we have to create these technological miracles without recognizing that we're really dependent on nature's way and a certain slice of nature's environment in which we need to live. And we seem to feel as though technology is going to be able to solve all the problems in the world, when in fact in the last 30 years, as I say, we've had an explosion of technology, and we've also had an explosion of real problems. And the idea that technology is going to solve those problems,
you sound like your dad,
is, I got to say, in my opinion, an illusion. And yet, most people...
But you know what? When you approach it with that attitude, you turn off the people who you really want to capture. Because most people, what you really want, you want the same thing that I want, is to get people in touch with themselves and their own being. But when you talk that way, you really only appeal to the intellect. You got to stay with the bioenergetic process. Sorry.
No, please.
But I think that's really important.
It is, because the foundation really aims to expand expand awareness and visibility of bioenergetic work
And the best way to do that
to new people.
the new people, the best way is to give them the experience of their own body. Nothing is greater than that. That's what the real key is. That's what Al knew. That's why he went around the world doing the exercise classes. That's why he taught so many of us how to do the exercise classes. Because he said, you could talk forever. When you get out there and you get people doing the work and getting that energy flowing and oxygen flowing through the body, then they begin to feel themselves alive. That's where it's really at. That's what's going to change the world. Sorry. I have such strong feelings about this.
No. No, I know you do.
I know. Thank you for understanding. Because I do have strong feelings about it. Really. I think it's probably what's gotten me so many jobs around the world, because I really believe this. It's not an intellectual thing.
Why don't you tell me then a little bit about your background in terms of, did you get into psychology before bioenergetics, or get into psychology because of bioenergetics?
I got into psychology first in college, graduated, and then got exposed to bioenergetics, and then from there I just did bioenergetics all my life.
Do you remember how you, because bioenergetics certainly at that time wasn't part of the college curriculum.
No, it never was.
And so how did you first...
It was the bioenergetic trainers that spent time with Al that went around the world teaching bioenergetics.
But how did you hear about it first?
I heard about it. Well, I think I'm privileged to say that the trainers in my school heard about it and invited people who did bioenergetics. And when they came to do bioenergetics with us, it was like, wow, I'm feeling me, not you. I'm feeling myself. That's really great. That was so powerful. That's what's happening. Bob Hilton was probably the greatest mentor that I ever had. You know him?
I do.
Yeah, he's a great man.
And he's still practicing down in the San Diego area.
Yep, he still is. God bless him. God bless him.
Yeah. God, I'm so glad we were able to make this connection.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And if you need an anchor of any sort, I'm out of the loop now because I haven't been teaching anymore. I'm just enjoying my family and my grandchildren now. That's where my life is at. They said it's our turn. And my kids were so understanding. But Paris and Dawn, when they were young, they were my children. They knew that I was committed and dedicated to the work, for one, and two, that I was bringing in the bread and butter, sending them off to college, and so that meant a lot to them. Yeah.
Well, it should be gratifying to know that Italy is very strong in bioenergetic work now.
That's my group.
It's one of the few countries that I believe.
Really?
It's what I was going to say is it's one of the few countries that publishes all advanced books. Many countries just publish 1 or 3 or 7.
Italy is where I taught the most. That was my focus point, and I went from Italy to other places, but Italy was where I taught predominantly for, 23 years or something. A long time, I know that. Yep. The Italians love bioenergetics, you know that.
The Italians and many of the southern people, Latin Americans, Brazilians love bioenergetics.
Now, I spent more time in Italy because I'm Italian, but that's why I know more about Italy than I do South America. Although I've been there and everything, but Italy is what I remember.
Well, it's too bad that Poland became so popular just recently, because you would have, I think, enjoyed going to Poland as a trainer.
I would have, especially being Polish.
They would have loved to have you.
Well, I would have loved it too.
Because I really appreciate the workshops that you've done for us at the foundation.
Thank you.
Oh, totally.
All right. Well, I would have loved to have gotten more involved in Poland because I'm Polish, and German and that, but Polish is my primary background. But it's okay. You know what? I've traveled everywhere and done every place. I'm happy now. In fact, my kids say, Nana, we are glad that you are home and here for us.
But, any thoughts that you have regarding how, because it's very interesting when you say, that kind of talk tends to put people off, and you really you really need to focus on the body work.
Yeah. Well, that's what's unique. That's what bioenergetics is all about. Biological energy. And that's what excites people, because it touches their inside. It doesn't just touch their brain and their intellect. Mm-hmm. It touches their inside. Mm-hmm. And then they feel change in their body. And that's what's profound. Intellectual change is very different than biological change.
But I can't help but believe that once you use the sense of grounding in terms of once you ground yourself to your body and to the world through the ground, that intellectually things become much clearer because you're connected to your feelings. And so it's not like an intellectuality that's cut off and disconnected from everything.
It's integrated. It's integrated with your feelings.
And so on that level, there is a place. And as you know, Dad was very intellectual. And he worked very actively to remake that connection with his body.
Yeah.
And so there's a real value in the intellectual aspect. And
only to the people who are intellectual, because what you're really talking about with intellect is the mind. What really touches people is feeling themselves in their own body. Mm-hmm. The mind is a separate entity that takes in learning and it's thinking and processing and stuff like that. But the body, that's a whole other story. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The whole body, in my opinion. And that was always my approach to bioenergetics.
Mm-hmm. What I'm trying to ask here is, I recognize, like Reich recognized, that just as there are energetic phenomena that happen to an individual, there's also energetic phenomena that happen to groups of individuals, populations. That's the sociology of it.
That's sociology.
But sociology, like psychotherapy, until Dad and Reich never really looked at the energetic aspects per se. And they still don't in terms of sociology.
You don't think that your dad did?
No, Dad did. Oh, but just like bioenergetics hasn't been fully accepted by the psychological area.
But that's a mental process, and that's why they can't integrate it, because they're coming from their mind instead of their full body.
But I think that if you look at the energetic aspects of populations, that's a place that requires a certain intellectual connectedness, because
Say more about what you mean by that, because
I'm trying to justify a certain intellectuality. I'm trying to justify a certain intellectuality that addresses things that are larger than ourselves.
Well, but you only reach the objectivity of getting outside is when you reach yourself inside. Then you have your soul.
That's where I'm going. That's where I'm going. I feel like the focus on the body is very important, but it's really an initial step to being able to be in the world fully.
Absolutely.
Okay. And to be in the world fully means that you need to be able to communicate with a certain intellectuality.
And hopefully, when you're in touch with your whole body, you're in touch with your intellect, your sensory awareness, your being. So, yeah.
That's exactly right. I mean,
the whole picture.
The whole purpose of the focus on the body is feelings, it's sensations, it's perception, it's awareness, it's connectedness, it's grounding, it's all these things. I mean, that's what bioenergetics really recognizes. It's otherwise generally not recognized in the medical community.
Oh, you know what? Don't don't get stuck on that. That's their problem because they think only medically.
No, but I'm just drawing the comparison.
Yeah.
That's all. I think one of the things that I do in the foundation that is a very positive thing is to invite collaboration and to avoid conflict and unnecessary debate.
Okay.
So again, like we were talking with Paris last night, it's a lot more about collaboration versus competition.
Absolutely.
We were talking about how competition has tended to become out of balance.
Well, competition is this way,
Conflict, it's effectively conflictual.
Yeah. And anytime you're in conflict, you've got armor going. You have armor going in order to maintain that.
Mm-hmm. I feel like with all the political discussion that's out there, most of it is totally meaningless. Some of it is
What do you mean? Specific? Give me some.
Well, any discussion about what the politicians are doing, or who's running for what, or whose policy stands for this or that, or what the ideologies are. All that stuff is basically meaningless. But on a certain level, you do need to talk about it.
Of course, I understand that, and I think you have to be able to talk about it. And if you can't, then you're up the wrong creek. You're never going to get any place.
That's right.
And you can't deny intellect.
And an ability to have a free discussion, is very limited these days. I mean, that's the problem. It's
What's your definition of free discussion?
One that's not contaminated by ideology or assumptions or fears or slogans or, something that's based on a real perception of how things are. That's right. I mean, you're perceiving, you may not be right about everything, but at least you're connected and you have a sense as to what the reality is compared to what everybody thinks and what they want to believe.
Yeah, that's a big battle uphill though that gets you not very far because you are immediately challenging those people that are intellectual. And what I have found over the years in my work in bioenergetics is never ever to do that. All that I'm concerned with is getting people to feel themselves, and once they feel themselves, then I've accomplished what I want to do. What they do with it is usually follow their feelings. But if you say, the intellect, well, that's not so important, let's put that one aside, you immediately lost them. You can't get any place. It just goes nowhere.
Yeah. No, but you're absolutely right in my experience that you cannot challenge somebody's illusions.
No.
How do you do that in therapy? When you're doing psychotherapy, that's what you do. I don't
do that.
No, well, you don't do it consciously or cognitively.
No, what I do is I approach the body, which is what Al taught me to do. And once you get in touch with the person's body and they get in touch with their own body, then they feel themselves. And the intellect slips away a little bit, and it's not so important anymore because they find that when they look at somebody that they love, they feel and they think, oh, this is what this is about. This is so wonderful. Wow. Somebody told me this, but wow, this is a really great feeling. That's where you got to go.
Yeah.
But is that not a process of melting away illusions?
If you want to use an intellectual explanation for it, sure, yes. Melting away illusions. But that's a big category, melting away illusions. Boy, I don't walk in and say, well, I'm going to melt your illusions, lady, so let's get started. I usually have put up a defensive barrier, and this person has gone down the street, and they ain't talking to me anymore.
That's what I mean to say when you can't challenge people's illusions on any level.
No.
And I think that's really the trick to psychotherapy is how to relate to people, That's right.
Do it through the body. That's what Al always said, and he was absolutely right. If you do it through the body, then you can connect. Don't try to tell them that that's the way to get there, is to get into your fucking mind. Get out of your fucking mind and get into your body. Whoa, they're gone. They won't give up that. You've got to just do bioenergetics. Get them to breathe, feel themselves, and then they begin to say, oh, I feel so differently. Wow, I could see the blue sky. Oh, I can smell the trees. They begin to get in touch with the world. because you've taken them out of their mind, and that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
You can't say you ought to get out of your fucking mind. You know, there's no place to be. That's a good trap. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, Al taught me to be quite blunt about it.
Yeah. But in this day and age, with the new technology,
Yeah.
we find that you have to reach larger groups of people with the internet and through the computer and through all the modern means. It's a much less personal world now.
Well, it's personal in the sense, though, that if you have a person who has heart and knows how to communicate the words to intrigue people to come and be with you, to spend time with you, and then you capture them with their breath and their grounding, then you got something. But if you try to, you got to come, you know. I'm going to teach you how to breathe, you know, because you don't fucking know how to breathe. What's the matter with you? Then you're down the street. Some people are too hard-nosed about it. I take the soft path. At any rate.
It's tough to feel good about the future these days. For many people.
I feel very good about
For many people, you're blessed. You are blessed, I think. I mean, you've had a wonderful career.
I have had a wonderful career.
You really have a wonderful family, a beautiful place to live. I can
Really,
attest
it
to
is.
that.
Really,
I mean,
really.
you know, I'm really jealous. And
But I've also been traveling all over the world. You ask my kids.
Right.
Ma, she's never here, you know. She's been gone for 40 years.
so it truly, but unfortunately, that's not the experience of many, many people now.
When you say, what do you mean by that when you say
Well, I just mean that, you know, in my experience, you know, as I travel around, I see a lot of people in every country. It's not just the United States, you know, it's Europe as well, and I'm sure every place. People struggling. You know, things are tougher now than they were 5 years ago, even than they were 20 years ago, in many respects for many people.
Really?
Oh yeah, I would say for the majority. Even in the United States, I would guess maybe 70% of the population is under much more stress now than ever before. I would say I could debate that very easily.
Well, you know, I think you could debate it easily because you're really wedded to it. I believe it. It's true. But when I walk into a room, a group of people, I know that means nothing to me other than it's just the reality of what is. What I believe is in bioenergetics. I believe in breathing and grounding and helping people get in touch with their body, and that's what I do. And that is my motivation. And I am not intellectually captivated by other things that are going on, because that's a waste of my time and energy. I try to convince people. I get locked into intellectualism, which goes nowhere. Goes nowhere, because most people are quite smart. But if I asked you to breathe, then I captured you in a different way.
But it's an ungrounded smartness.
It's an ungrounded what?
Smartness.
To be.
You know, many people are very intelligent,
Yeah.
but their intelligence is not grounded.
Oh, I agree with you. It's an yeah. But you know what? You never start out by saying that to somebody who's out of their ungrounded.
No, I wouldn't say that directly to somebody who was ungrounded. But you and I talking in this context,
We can talk about
you know, I want to share experiences with you.
Okay. I can walk into a room with 1,000 people and recognize that they're all ungrounded, but I don't have to say anything about it. Just say, oh God, I got a lot of work to do here. And so I get to work.
And a couple of points that brings up to my mind, you know, when I think about bioenergetics and how it's evolving and what I want the foundation to be more involved with, a good kind of metaphor comes to mind, and that is, you know, out of any group of 20 people, say the 20 people sitting right around us here, probably 3 or 4 are really in need of bioenergetic or any type of psychotherapy. Okay.
I don't think that's a very good path.
No, let me just finish to say though that in comparison, I think it could be said that all 20 could benefit from bioenergetic body work.
Probably, but it's not an approach that's good. because it keeps you from making contact and connecting, irregardless of whether they're connected with themselves. Because if you're connected with yourself, that's alcohol in that. You're connected with yourself, and you go up to people and you connect with them, and they feel you, and then they start to get connected with themselves, and that's the real contact, and that's the real contact they're making with themselves, and that's what you want. But you can't approach it from here. It's just, said that a long time ago to me.
And the other point, though, well, I use that example really to distinguish between bioenergetic analysis as a psychotherapy, as a form of psychotherapy, where it's used really in the one-to-one setting or in the group settings that we're all familiar with. But then there's a whole other aspect of the bioenergetics, which doesn't include the analytic aspect, the analysis aspect, and that's really, more along the lines of the exercise classes or the TRE kind of work that David Berselli is doing. And I think that's an area.
I have some questions about some of the things he's doing.
No question, I do too, but it doesn't invalidate, I think, the idea that bioenergetics can be very useful on a body level to large groups of people, larger than what's the case in one-to-one psychotherapy.
Provided you have a leader who is in touch with that and knows how to deal with it. Because you have all that energy that's mixed in the room, and you have to be able to somehow, you need to be really grounded in good bioenergetic exercises to know what to do. If you don't, you're going to lose them. Same is true with an individual as well, but a group is even more difficult. You really have to be on top of that one.
Suppose you had a group of 40 people who had never experienced bioenergetics before, and they came because they believe that this might be an experience that could make them feel better.
Yeah,
I suppose
that's
is
good.
What would appeal.
That's a good thing. I wouldn't turn that one down.
How would you think in terms of running such a group? What would you think in terms of introducing them? How would you introduce such a group who really had virtually no preconception of what bioenergetics was?
I would have them meet themselves, to get inside of themselves through their own breath and breathing and contact with themselves. Because what better technique do we have than helping people to do that? I mean, it's not here. It's not here. It's here. I hardly do any talking.
But would you start them with
breathing?
The arch?
No, just plain old ordinary breathing to start out with, because the arch is too aggressive and too stressful for people that don't have any experience in bioenergetics. That's a big mistake to use the arch.
Okay, so elaborate a little bit. No, I'm curious. I mean, suppose we had this group of 10 people right here.
Immediately I would just say, okay. So because they would be willing to do
Right. They're focused on you.
I'd say, okay, I want to introduce you to your body, to let you get to know more about your body and your energy in your body. And they look at me sort of strange. They say, sure, energy, yeah, right on. But they'll say, okay, now I want you to close your eyes and just get into your feet. And begin to just pump your knees up and down. And you get them breathing and doing that, they immediately begin to energize their whole system. That's how I start my exercise classes. Because if you're doing this, you're engaged in this, and it doesn't do anything. You don't go anyplace. Mistake.
And then from there?
Doing anything energetically that I can, getting to pump their knees, to get more energy into their legs, to bring the energy up into the top of their body, to get them breathing and feeling themselves. That's the whole goal of it. Because once I can separate you from your intellect and outside here and bring you into yourself, then I've accomplished what I want to do, is to get you in touch with yourself. Does that make sense?
Yes, I agree, totally.
Yeah, that's what I do. I mean, that's my intention.
Would you introduce the arch and the bend over to a first-time group during the first?
Not initially.
Not initially, but maybe later in that first session.
Yeah, the arch is too aggressive and too stressful for anybody who's brand new. No, never use the art to begin with. That's just not a good thing to do. No, you'd get people walking out of the room. No, that's a mistake.
And why do you think it's a mistake?
Because you're inviting them to mobilize energy in their body, which they're not even in touch with, their own energy. But you're asking them to mobilize energy which is deep down inside of them in their whole being to bring it up to the surface and to experience it. And that's like asking a baby, I want you to walk right now. It's time for you to walk. And the baby has not even barely cried yet, or walked or crawled. I mean, it's too soon. Yeah. I mean, I often start my exercise classes, sometimes standing, a lot of times, if it's a very novice group, I'll have them lying down so that they can get the breathing opened up into the whole body, and then mobilize them to reach a point where they begin to stand up on their own 2 feet. But if you try to do it too soon, sometimes it's not good. In an exercise class, I don't have that option because everybody is standing, but I can manipulate that pretty quickly by getting them down. But you want them to breathe, but you have to be conscious of what breathing does, and it puts them in touch with themselves, and that's scary. And if they don't feel the ground and they're not grounded, then you're creating a problem for them. I mean, I'm sensitive to all of that stuff. That's for me why I think I've been so successful in doing exercise classes. Because I really am good at scanning and looking at people's eyes and telling when people are getting overloaded, and then I say, I need to bring this down a little bit, or to go over and make contact with that person, and give them some of my energy and help them get grounded. You just have to be attentive.
Is it true in your years working with Dad that his approach softened?
Absolutely, yes. He was aggressive, and you're going to do it my way, or the highway. Yeah, he did. He softened after a while. I don't know who was responsible for that, whether Leslie was, or you growing up, or what it was, but he did soften after a while. Yeah, he did, yeah.
Because I remember when I came back into the community, I think it was around 2005, and that was actually at the workshop that we did in Florida, that you and Dad did in Florida in 2005. I shortly thereafter attended a training program with Frank Ladke.
Oh, Frank's a great teacher. He's a wonderful man. It was good that you went to Frank. He's good.
And after the first half session, I asked him, I had the opportunity at lunch to say, what is this? This is like bioenergetic light.
And what did he say?
He explained, he said that was one of the reasons that he had so much respect for Dad, was that Dad had actually recognized that he was too ambitious and too aggressive, and that much more could be had with much less.
Yeah.
And
but your dad, he wanted to sell something.
He did.
He wanted to sell bioenergetics, so he was eager to do it. So go ahead with your story. I could totally agree with you. I understand where you're going.
Well, I just mean to say that after being away from the community and from the work for really decades, I came back in 2005, as I say, to find it very different from what it had been in the 60s and the 70s. And yet there's a lot of value from the early work that hasn't carried forward.
Like what, for example?
Diagnostics, in my opinion.
Oh, honey, that goes on from the moment you look at somebody's body. You don't miss that one. I mean, I diagnose immediately, but it's never part of what I'm doing. My job is to make a connection with you and let you know that I'm really here for you, and that you can trust me. I gotta gain your trust. My brilliance is not gonna gain your trust, honey. Believe me, it just doesn't work that way.
No, but I think I would say that you're talking about the analytic aspect.
No,
but from a training, let me say though, that from a training point of view, having attended some training, during the years of 2005, 2008, and also knowing a number of people who are going through the training process, the whole aspect of diagnostics, using the body to really relay specific clues, I think was a valuable part of what Dad did.
It was, but it never was the beginning. I mean, you were a bioenergetic therapist, you walk into a room with whatever, 10 people, 100 people, it doesn't matter, you're doing diagnostics, but you never talk about it.
No, and I'm not saying, and again, it's just you and me talking professionally. This is not a kind of conversation that you would have with a client. Okay, but for us talking about, you know, how the work is done, how it's evolved, and that sort of thing, I think there's two things about the way training is done now that I think in the past, the way it had been done was valuable and is a little lost. One is that when people go into workshops and training, they're much more resistant to showing themselves. And I see that the evidence for that is how willing they are to wear short clothes. You know, in the case of both men and women, perhaps right down to bikinis. Everybody feels.
Why do you think that exists?
I don't know, but I think, you know, the big value of bioenergetic analytical work is to be able to read the body.
Of course.
And you can't read the body if you can't see the body fully.
But you can't expect people who have no experience to take their clothes off.
And I don't. But my sense is a little bit that, you know, this is an aspect of the early bioenergetics that kind of got watered down, you know, and it's not as though it needs to be brought up into trainees' faces or people attending workshops into their faces, but I almost feel as though the bioenergetic community has forgotten how important it is.
The exercise?
No. Well, the willingness for people who want to do bioenergetics to show themselves.
Oh, well,
And in conjunction with,
I agree with you. Okay, go
that's
ahead.
well, this is a little bit why I bring it up for discussion. I'm interested to hear your opinion.
Okay.
And in conjunction with that is the very explicit kind of work that Dad used to do in the demonstrations and the workshops and the training sessions, where he would go through and he would say, you know, this skin color is indicative of this, or that shape is indicative of that, or the lack of alignment is this, or this represents a split. All that sort of stuff is obviously nothing you would discuss in a session.
No, in fact, I rarely saw him do that in a group setting at all. He did it.
Oh, really?
Oh, absolutely. Al was very attentive that way. He would not do that except in a training session.
Well, okay, maybe training. I mean, that's what I think of when I think of Dad.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that's the way Dad is in my memory, is going through all this stuff, you know, line by line.
Right off the bat with a clean group, forget it, they're all going to run out.
No, absolutely not. But at some point in the training, it's appropriate. And what I'm saying is that my sense is that in too many training situations, it's not addressed at any point in the 4-odd-year experience.
Well, I don't know which training groups you're talking about because mine don't feel that way.
Okay, and that may be the case because I've only attended one, but I do base it on discussions that I have with, you know, recent CBTs and people who have recently been through trainings.
You've got to look at their trainers and see who they are.
Well, I've heard many different things. Many different things, yeah, and we can talk a little bit more, and maybe, and this is the reason I bring it up, because I do want to hear your sense of things.
Okay, one small thing that I can say is that, you know that I've done exercise classes around the world, and with hundreds and hundreds of people, and I'll look around the room, and I'll have some people that will be fully dressed, some people will have shorts and a tank top, some people will come and will take everything off with their bra and panties, you know. And I'm okay with that. I don't say, what's the matter with you? You got to take those things off, you know, or something like that. I go with whatever is there, and I recognize that this is a statement about themselves, and that I have to honor that. And so then, when I say, just start pounding on your chest, that's a good thing because they don't know what the hell they're doing, you know. But you know, it's touching their body, you know, and getting down there and feeling themselves, and you know, that's what you want to do. It doesn't matter where they're at. But you could be with 100 people or 10 people, and they're all going to be in a different place, and you just got to be perceptive enough to see where they're at and take them where they're at.
Now, given that belief,
I do have that belief.
Yes, given that, and I think you're entirely right, by the way. I don't dispute any aspect of it. But given that belief, why do you feel the academic credential is so important?
Oh, I think it's critically important. I think that it says a statement about your education, your knowledge, your awareness. It's critically important. Are you talking about bioenergetic training? Or are you talking
No. Academic licensure. Academic licensure.
Licensing is very important because it's the basics in psychology to have. It's very, very important. I agree with that. I think that is good. It's really been helpful to make that transition into bioenergetics for me. Absolutely. But I mean, but to take somebody, say, out of high school without any background, in a high school or a college, and have some background in everything, biology and physiology and what have you, you're going to lose them because they don't even have the education.
Wait. I'm sorry, I didn't understand this last point. Could you restate that?
I think the people that are in your classes, and 90% of the time, they come because they know what bioenergetics is. The other 10% come because she goes and she loves it, and she says she gets so much out of it. So I'm going to go and I'm going to stand right next to her, and I look at who's next to these people all the time, and where their support comes from. And I don't expect them. If you've got all your clothes on and the one next to you's got shorts and a tank top or a bra, I don't deal with that. That's bullshit, because that's critical and judgmental. It's where you're at that I have to approach. So it's looking at the person and taking them for themselves. Does that help?
Yep. Let me ask you a little bit about, how you think in terms of doing therapy over the long haul with a client, a year or two or more, perhaps.
Well, I think it's critically important. It depends on whether the client has a good connection with you, if they can go the route. Some people can't. It's too much for them. They don't even know what they're getting themselves in for. Some of them are, I'm ready to expose myself. I want to change. That's a whole other story. I could approach those two people differently. I only answered your question in a broad way.
No, but that's very interesting. I mean, I sense that you will tailor your approach based on what you understand the client
absolutely
most needs or most wants.
Absolutely. If I don't read your body, that's the first thing that you learn in 101 bioenergetics. You read the body.
Yep.
And if the body says, I'm used to having my clothes on, and being very tentative and quiet. If I say to you, oh, come on now, let's straighten up here and take those clothes off. Oh shit, you're gonna run out the room. I'm Italian. You understand what I'm saying?
I do, absolutely.
Okay. I recognize body reading. Body reading is very much a part of me. And if I see somebody in a room full of shorts and tank tops, and then some people with clothes on, I never question that. I just accept it. I work with it and I deal with it. And when I come near them, then I respect them and their boundaries. And if they don't have, they got on their shorts and their tank top, I say, well, hey, you're looking great. Your breathing is really good, and I'll touch them because I know that they're more open to it. I'm reading. I have to read the body. That's my job.
Speaking of which, since you've done psychotherapy over a number of decades, a lot of years.
Yes. I've done it for over 40 years, yes.
Yeah, I'm curious, do you get a sense that you see changes in the basic nature of people over time? Either, in their bodies or just the way they are?
In bioenergetics or some kind of body therapy, you can tell the people that are that way. But there's a lot of people, we can look right around this room right now, we can see people who have never had any body therapy. Obvious, they don't even breathe, let alone, make contact, their feet are off the floor. It's all those things that you learn. And it's okay, I would never go up and say, oh, how are you?
No, but I'm wondering if your sense is that people on some average basis have changed in the last 40 years in terms of the kind of problems they present.
No, I don't think so. I think people still have the same kinds of problems unless they've had therapy. if they've had therapy, they've changed to some degree. Those that have had body therapy, and specifically bioenergetic therapy, have changed more. But
No, but the general thing, as the culture changes, if you see changes in people's personality, body, that sort of thing, because one thing that I think I notice is that in the area of sex, for example, I think 100 years ago, the big problem that people had, therapeutically as it were, is they had too much sexual energy, and it was very difficult to contain it. And now it's turned around, it seems, 180 degrees, in the sense that all of a sudden we need all sorts of medications in order to perform sexually. So it's almost like there was a libido that was too strong, and yet it was too restricted 100 years ago.
That's the key word, restricted.
Well, sure,
It's been restricted,
that's right.
and that was the problem.
But
There's
now,
so much attention.
the libido is really weakened.
Yeah.
And that represents a big difference over, say, the last 100 years, say 1910 to 2010.
I agree.
And yet it accompanies a sexualization, it seems, in the culture. Well, my general sense is that women and young women, they tend to think in terms of sex more and more without feeling.
That's because that's what men expect, and so they're trying to perform.
Yes, I mean, there's more of a performance aspect than I think there was even only 40 or 50 years ago.
I totally agree with you. I'm close to 80.
And
I've seen that.
Well, this is what I want to hear, because I know you work with people's sexual issues.
People come to me for that predominantly. That's a problem. I mean, people come with all the time.
And I think it's something that we all sense is going on, but it's difficult for people to really understand it because they get confused. They see the sexualization happening, and it's obviously not a freeing because it's not really a gratifying sort of a thing, but it's a way that's kind of expected to be, and it's performance-based at the cost of feelings.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And so it's very difficult for people to understand that despite this sexualization, this higher availability of things sexual, as it were,
You're talking about people that are that way.
Well, I'm talking about as a culture, the population in general. We're exposed to ads on television that are explicitly about sexual performance and, the Viagra ads and that sort of thing.
Do you?
No, of course not. And, it's basically exactly contrary to what's important from bioenergetic point, from any energetic point of view. But what I'm trying to say here is that I think that people are confused because they see the sexualization, and it's not a mature sexuality.
In many cases it isn't. That's why you can see it so openly, because they don't know. They think this is a way, I'm going to attract a man.
This is the confusion.
Attract a woman, whatever the sex might be.
Right, and so I get a sense of a high degree of confusion, I think, much more so than ever before. And I think this is the source of it. People confuse what they see, the sexualization thing going on, for sexuality, and yet the two are very different.
Well, I think if I can offer you...
Oh, please.
Try something. Confusion is a mental thing. It's a sensory thing, an awareness thing, that they're out of touch with their own bodies. They think everything through. You know that. I mean, you get those people immediately in your office all the time. And what you know is missing, that they can't feel anything. That's what you really are dealing with. And you've got them have to get them to feel themselves. And that's the key. Not for you to feel me, but for you to feel yourself. Then you can feel them.
What would you say the most...
Did that make any sense to you?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, go ahead.
What do you think the most common sexual complaint is that you've seen over years?
That they don't make it. They don't make that complaint. They don't come out and say, I'm having a sexual problem. I mean, it's rare. It's like 8% of the people come in and say that. But I can tell. I look at the pelvis and I look at the start missing the chest and the, and if I go to touch him, I say, oh, no, I shouldn't do that,
And if you ask, how's your sex life, what do you think the answer will be?
It's fine. It's fine. I say, oh, okay. So I know, I got my work cut out for me here. I think to myself that.
Right. But you say, though, that people come to you because you have a reputation for dealing with sexual issues.
Yes.
And amongst those people, they must have a complaint that they can state.
Well, see, when I say that people come to see me because they have sexual problems, they don't know that they have, a lot of them don't even know they have sexual problems. They would come in and if I really asked openly about their sexuality, oh, everything is fine. Yes, my husband, we have sex, and he has an orgasm all the time. Or, oh yeah, my wife, she has an orgasm all the time, And I know this is all bullshit here. I can't tell because I can tell because there's no movement in the body. That's what I'm looking at. That's what bioenergetic taught us. You got to pay attention to the body and all this bullshit. You got to be able to separate. At any rate, I'm probably more blunt than you want me to be.
No, I don't mind. I mean, it makes it more colorful.
Sorry. I've never been one to mince my words.
Well, you clearly have very strong feelings.
I do have very strong feelings. I've been doing this work for a long time, and I work with so many groups of people that are so uptight sexually. It breaks my heart. It really does. It breaks my heart that they're so out of touch with their feelings and their sexuality. It's tragic. We need to do more. But we can't come at it with, I'm going to do a workshop on sexuality. Boy, that's the fastest way you lose them. Getting you in touch with yourself and how you feel. It's a little scary, but not so bad, You can handle that. How you sell it is important, right? Isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, Dad was a real salesman.
Yeah, he was.
I mean, he was many things.
Oh, your dad was God. He was God in my world. He was excellent.
I mean, he not only, was very intellectually creative, but he was also very much a seeker.
He was a human being, and he was emotionally contactful, and he helped you to make contact with yourself. God bless him. He's a great man. Your dad was.
Yeah.
Great man.
But despite everything, he also struggled.
Oh, God. Who doesn't struggle? I've never met anybody bioenergetic therapist that doesn't struggle. You know who my greatest clients are? Bioenergetic therapists. I mean, because we're all looking for who am I? How do I feel? What does my feelings mean? What do I do with them? How can I express them? It's the core. It's if people get trapped in character structure or the techniques and stuff like that instead of connecting with the hearts.
But still, bioenergetic therapists do need to understand that material.
Of course they do, but you don't approach it from that perspective. You teach it from
in
the
practice.
Language of the body. You teach it from the language of the body. Say, I'm teaching you the language of the body, and you eventually get to the sexuality, but you don't start there. You don't ever start there, otherwise it'll all fly out the window. Unless they invite you, and even when they invite you, you gotta watch. They're so funny. We want you to do a workshop in sexuality. I want to make sure you're really good at it. So, what I base on what I'm going to do is when I ask them to breathe, what's their breathing like? That tells me everything. It tells me everything. And then I know, oh God, I got my word cut out. Okay, I got to start here. That's all. Pretty basic stuff. I can just work here for 10 weeks on breathing, and that'll be great.
In the long term, when you have an opportunity to work with a client over several sessions or more,
which I have done hundreds of times.
No doubt.
Yeah.
How do you think about getting them to breathe better over that period?
How do I think?
Yeah, what do you do? I mean, I'm sure you don't even think about it anymore. But I mean, how could you?
I think about it. I think about it a lot.
Explain, perhaps,
I'm very
how you approach it.
Okay, I'm very attentive to being 3 feet away, and then what happens to your breathing when I get closer? What do you do with your breathing? How does it change? Without being obvious. But I'm watching you, and I'm listening to you, and I'm watching your breathing and how it's changing as I get closer. That tells me what I need to do. Does that the question go?
Only partly.
Okay, what's the other half?
Well, the other half is what kinds of things do you see? And, we have to talk hypothetically here because we don't have an actual client.
The most important thing is the breathing. That's what Al said all the time.
But as you get closer to a person, I could imagine that some people would restrict their breathing more.
For what?
As an example. Well, what do you see as a therapist?
What you see is restricted breathing.
But what changes as you change your position?
The breathing is the most important thing. The posture changes. The closer I get to you, the more you pull in, the more anxious you get, whatever. Everything, if that's going to happen, that's what's going to happen. So I'm looking for what that is.
Yep.
That's reading the language of the body, which I was.
And then from there, how do you get them to breathe more fully?
Oh, it depends on the individual. If they said, I've come to you because I've been doing bioenergetics for 49,000 years, and I understand that, I need to go further. I've come to see you. I said, okay. And I'm still looking at the breathing. And I'm looking to see how are they breathing. And then that tells me what I need to do. And then if I present them going over the breathing stool and they hesitate, I know right away I need to do breathing in the standing position, in the grounding position. I'm cautious about making contact because that would just alienate them or make them contracted or feel uncomfortable. I use my skills of reading the language of the body to tell me what to do. That's my key. That's what Al taught me.
How much of a session do you spend actually on your feet as a therapist?
Probably most of the time.
Most of the time. Isn't that interesting?
What would I do? Stand on my head? I don't know what you mean. What would I do?
I think, traditionally, psychotherapists sit on their butt.
Listen, I'm not a psychotherapist. I'm a bioenergetic therapist. I stand on my feet. We're not traditional therapists.
No, of course not. No, but I think that is important. I think that, and what about the client?
I let them do what is comfortable for them. Because then I get to tell where they're coming from and how they feel and what is most comfortable. I let them set the space between us. I let them do whatever is right for them because I want them to feel comfortable. And then I go from there. And that tells me, okay, we have 10 sessions to go before I might be able to touch them, or something like that. But their body language speaks to me all the time. That's the first thing we learn in bioenergetic therapy training is language of the body. We got to read it right away, and it tells you what to do. And that's what I do. And it may take 10 sessions before I could ever say, well, how are you today? Without scaring them out of their form. Is that what the answer you
Oh, yeah.
Good, okay. What I'd like to share is that I wish that bioenergetics would do more around the world. And I'm not talking about myself anymore because I'm almost 80, and my kids say, it's time for you, Nana, to stay home and take care of us, And I want to anyway. I've been traveling for 40 years. I need to do that. I want to do it for myself. To do more bioenergetics around the world. Stop pussyfooting around. We're just not doing it. At least that's what I see.
Yeah. Well, this may be a little intellectual, but unfortunately, the way I see it is that the powers that be really profit from people seeking to relieve their various difficulties. And bioenergetics could address that, and that's a lot of the reason why we have an uphill fight.
But wait a minute. You said three things and you have to explain. What do you mean by the first thing?
I think simply that the way the culture has evolved most recently is that it wants to keep people feeling uneasy and stressed out and searching and reaching for the next thing. I think that's what drives.
Then we are in big doo-doo.
I'm afraid I do really believe that.
Well, see, I don't believe that. I believe that every human being wants to have contact. We want contact. We're scared shitless, though. What would you do if I do that? Will you attack me? Will you touch my breast? Will you want me to go to bed with you? What's going to happen? What's he going to do?
And I agree with that. I think fundamentally that is what every human being wants to do.
Yeah.
But as we've seen, it's not up to the human beings as much as it's up to the corporations now. And
Now wait a minute, what's the big jump to the corporations?
well, in my view, the corporations is what creates the environment that we all share.
No. It's the other way around. The people do it. The people do it, and the corporations eventually have to give in.
Well, I think corporations do have to give in eventually.
Yeah, but the people have to do that to convince them that's the thing to do.
No, I think what I'm trying to say though is that there is, just like Reich postulated, if a positive energy impulse is rebuffed by whatever sort of conflictual thing, whether it's a baby who reaches for mom
Basic stuff, yeah.
and gets this horrifying look of anger or disgust or whatever, to a culture that really reaches out for civil rights or that sort of thing, a positive impulse of energy.
You're talking about miles and miles and miles that we're trying to go. That's a long trip. That's why we're in bioenergetics, because we believe that, and that's what we're fighting for. That's what we're working towards.
Right. But what I'm saying, let me finish to say though, because I want to complete this connection to the corporations.
Okay.
Just like the mother is the source of that negative energy, so have the corporations become the source of that negative energy for our culture. That's about as simply as I can put my belief. And it is a belief, because there's no way you can prove
You want
this.
to get in therapy with me? I'll clear that one up for you.
Well, I'd sure be interested in your thoughts that come to mind.
Well, I just think that's a negative statement, but it's a positive statement in terms of your ability to express how you feel, if that is really how you feel. And if a client said that to me, I would just be, thank you, God, for bringing this person into my life so that I can be there for them.
I can't help but believe that's the reality.
For me, it is.
No, I'm talking about what I was explaining for me. I think that's not only how I feel. I think that that's my reaction to the reality of what we're all dealing with.
I agree with you. I think that's what we're all dealing with. That's why we are living, we have these separate tables, and the tables are so far apart, and we don't touch, and we're afraid to make contact, we don't want to look anybody in the eye. Oh, God forbid.
Right. Especially in the U.S.
Oh, yeah.
Very much so.
Much worse than in Europe. Europe is much more open. I love working in Europe.
I do
I could walk
agree.
up to somebody and say, let me help you here, breathe. And they go, oh, thank you. Then they start to cry. I think, great, that's good. This is what we're looking for. Is we have some expression on there. Good, go for it,
But stick with me a little bit.
Okay.
Help me with my negativity.
Okay, good. Be as negative as you want to. I've dealt with the best.
Boy, I can be awfully negative.
Okay, that's fine.
I got a lot to be angry about.
Oh, listen, I could tell. I would love to get you in my office and deal with you. Go ahead. Yes.
Well, that's just it. How would you deal with me, though?
And, well, as soon as I can get you over the breathing stool, I'd do that.
Well, speaking of that, as soon as we get home, one thing I do need to do is show you my new portable breathing stool.
Okay. Well, I have the greatest breathing stool in the world, but you can show me yours. I had mine handmade. Except that, you're barking up a tree that says, I am assuming that all bioenergetic therapists use their breathing stool. I'm here to tell you that's not true.
Let me tell you, I know that. And by the same token, I think that...
And they all know that about me, though. When they come, they say, I know you use the breathing stool, that's why I'm here.
Well, it's interesting, I recently showed a recent CBT, and I'm not sure that she'd ever used the breathing stool.
I'm not surprised. I've had that experience a lot. But nobody that ever came in therapy with it would ever walk away with that.
Without it, yeah.
No way.
Yeah.
I get them over the breathing stool as quick as I possibly can.
Oh, good. That's good to hear. Now, with somebody who really doesn't know anything about body work, how many sessions does that normally take?
Well, it isn't so much about not knowing about body work. It's the kind of relationship they had as a child with their mother, with their parents. What kinds of trauma did they have? And I have to take all of that into consideration before I can even touch them physically, literally. I can be there for them and I can hear them and give them my heart and how I feel, but I can't touch them yet. The biggest mistake I've seen it on stage happen 1,000 times. There's about, how can I help you? What a way to scare somebody right off the stage. It's poof, you're gone.
So how would you approach? How do you approach?
I get within 3 feet and then I see what the energy response in the body is, and then it helps me to decide how close I can get. And of course I always ask the history, and I'm always looking at the eyes and I'm looking at the body posture to tell me how are they feeling about me being close. It's going to tell me immediately what I need to know about their contact as a child. That's my basic purpose all the time.
But what do you feel are the most important qualities for a therapist?
Their own therapy.
The qualities.
Oh, the specific qualities?
What would you think? I mean, what comes to mind?
That they've grounded, they're in touch with themselves and their feelings, that they breathe, that they talk feelings, they're human, and tactful, intimate. Those are the kinds of qualities that I look for. I just love those people that come in, I'm here to do bioenergetic therapy. Yes. I got my work cut out for me. Oh my God. But I think bioenergetics is the best form of psychotherapy that exists. I really do. I'm sorry that it hasn't taken over more. I think when Al stopped teaching, the essence of him and his energy that he put out, and his traveling all over the world and doing workshops and exercise classes and things like that, he just gave so much of himself. He really did. He believed in what he was doing.
But he also got a lot back. He had a really good life.
Well, listen, he could not have given what he gave if he didn't get it back. There's absolutely no way that I mean, those two go hand in hand.
And that's a good argument for American capitalism. In fact.
Oh, I wouldn't get if you get into that, then you have to get into a whole nother.
I know, and
it's not worth it.
And it's all intellectual.
But
you know, there is that reality.
There is. So you know. So yes, reality is that ground is there. That's reality. So I don't have to talk about it. You know, other than the fact I have to know that it has to be there in order for me to get across the space here. You have to get beyond that.
But I still.
I would say to make contact. To make contact. At least that's what he'd say to me.
Well, that's interesting because, you know, after this bunch of shootings we've had in this country, these past number of years, which only seem to be getting more frequent, you know, and everybody tries to figure out, what can we really do to address this so it doesn't happen?
Address what?
Well, the frequency of the senseless mass killings that we have, you know, whether...
Well, you know, I'm laughing not at you. I'm laughing at because I would cry. Yes, that exists, but we are approaching what to do about that, and it's through us and the changes and our being in touch with our own feelings and being grounded. That's what makes the difference. That's what's going to make those changes. Not trying to say I have to change your mind and not think that way.
But what do you think it is that creates that kind of behavior?
Abuse, abandonment, a lack of love, ungroundedness. You want any more adjectives?
Well, my belief is that it is a disconnection, just as you say, another way to say it, but also a lack of means to express the anger.
Yes, I agree, but that's true. See, you know, I think those things, but they're not what I'm more in touch with what happens when I come near you, what happens when I touch you. Those are the things that are meaningful, that I know those things.
But as a society, and again, you know, when you start talking about sociological things, you have to resort to intellectuality, you know, because your feelings inform.
I have avoided that.
But I don't think you can. I think, you know, the problems today are such that you have to be able to talk on these terms.
I don't think you can talk people into that.
Well, I don't know about you can talk people into it, but you have to be able to talk on those terms. Otherwise...
I think you need to feel on those terms.
But that's what's different about bioenergetics is the feeling and the intellect is connected.
Yes,
And that's why I was
yes.
saying there's too much intelligence that's ungrounded and unconnected.
So that's a true statement. I would agree with you. So what? Because that should stop me from feeling and touching?
No, but by the same token, it shouldn't stop us from talking about it.
Okay, we can talk about it. What am I saying? It exists.
It exists. That's right.
So the best that we can do, that I understand, and my bioenergetic teacher says, it's not the talking about it, it's the being it. The being a contactful person. Being in this world and being present. And
Right.
you live that way.
And being fully perceptive
Present.
and present.
Yes. Perceptive is good, but present is much better. Because that's what people notice.
But it's a sensing. It's a sensing in all ways, as opposed to analytically trying to. Frankly, I think what most people do is they use their mind to convince themselves that the world is the way they want it to be.
Yes, I know. But Al taught us about those things down there. Making contact with the ground, which then enables you to bend your knees and then send sensation up your body, and then you have feeling.
Right.
And then you can contact other people, but you can't approach it any other way. That's why I love the exercise classes. I do them whenever I have a chance. Anytime I get an invitation to do it, I do one. Because I think it's the best way and the fastest way to communicate with a whole lot of people.
And the Berselli work is very interesting because, it's focused. He focuses on the outcome of achieving the energy streaming, which he calls vibrations, which we all call vibrations, to come up as far up into the body as possible. And he does that by this series of 7 exercises, which begin with the feet and culminate in this psoas muscle. And,
But that puts a lot of emphasis on sexuality, which I think is a mistake. But go ahead.
And all I mean to say is that, I think what's really interesting and about his approach is that kind of an approach at a targeted outcome could be replicated in other ways with bioenergetics. And this is only a half-baked thought, but it's a little bit
Too sexualized myself.
well, that particular approach, but it doesn't have to be sexualized.
Good,
It could be oriented towards anger, or it could be oriented towards expression of all sorts.
Okay.
Or it could be oriented towards vulnerability.
Okay.
There are a number of different things, and out here, especially in Skiba, Barbara English has been doing some very interesting things, like doing these workshops, no time to think, no time to breathe. And they're doing another one, I'm too busy to live my life.
Wow.
And all of them are body-based. And I think that, this is kind of the way that you work with groups in the future. This makes a lot of sense to
Working
me.
with groups has always been the way. Al said it all the time. You'd work with the groups. That's one of the reasons why I've been doing groups all over the world for 40 years. Groups are critically important because you can reach a higher mass of people, and because you have the techniques and the skills to be able to get them into their body and to get them to feel themselves, which is what your motivation is.
Yeah, and so yoga, I think, that's probably a big reason why yoga has become so popular now.
Yeah.
Because it does help along those lines.
Yeah,
What is your feeling about yoga?
I think it has a limitation. It's contact with self, but it's not a contact with ultimately this is what we really have to do. I have to get in touch with myself before I can do that. But yoga gets in touch with this, but it doesn't get in touch with that. But I think yoga is good. I think yoga is good.
Yeah, no, it's well worth.
But
the effort.
I would do a bioenergetic exercise class 100 times over before I do a yoga class.
Yes, I think that's real clear.
Yeah.
And yoga, I agree with you. I think yoga's got, a couple of problems and some limitations as well.
I don't care.
But that's right. I mean, it's healthier for people to be doing yoga than to be doing calisthenics.
I don't think in those.
But
I think it's great to do bioenergetics because it gets you in touch with your body and it gets you connected to the ground and you're breathing and then your ability to make contact with other people. Then you get to all the other things. Yeah. First is self. At least that's what Lowen taught me. Caracas. Yep. First you gotta make contact with you. And the world.
Oh, okay, good. Because I need to show you that stool. Well, come on, have a seat and let me show this to you.
Okay.
This is really, I'm really proud of this. And as you can see, it folds up into a little piece that will fit into most suitcases.
Hey.
Well, this is the portable bioenergetic stool, version 2.
You're kidding.
No, that's what this
selling
is.
it?
Well, yes, we will be. We don't have that exactly figured out, but yes, that is the plan, absolutely. And plans for people to make their own.
Excellent.
But,
that is going to be such a gift to the people that can't afford to do it any other way.
right. No, I think.
What a gift you're giving. God, say thank you.
And,
Did you make this?
Yep, me and a carpenter.
Excellent.
And
I'm so impressed.
there are no tools required. You notice how it goes together with no tools, and you watch how it all comes together.
Wow.
And it's the exact dimensions of the old fixed stools. And Dad's old portable stool, he had a nice stool that he used to have a carry case for.
Oh, honey, look.
But-
I was with him all the time, practically.
But it needed screwdrivers. And it took a little while to put it together. And also, if you remember, it required these slats on the side to make it really stable.
I don't remember that anymore.
I'll have to put one together because I have his old portable stool.
Yeah. Right.
And
You want to put that as the old and the new.
version 1, version 2.
Yeah.
That's right. I certainly will. This is still a little bit of a prototype, but there you go, right out of your suitcase, good to go for your own personal use or demonstration work.
Is fabulous, honey.
And you saw how small the package was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is great. I'm impressed.
But what's your thought?
I think it's actually quite excellent. Looks like it's working really good, Fred. Oh, excellent.
Oh yeah, no, it's exactly dimensions of the old stools.
Yep.
But it's nice to go over it. That's right.
There's a little counting on your back.
Sure. Oh gosh. Oh, that feels great.
Be good if you could let some.
Oh no, this is a real treat.
Huh?
This is a real treat. Oh, yeah.
Well, I'm an old hand at this. I do it all the time. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Keep your eyes open.
Okay.
Yeah. Go, there you go. That's
Yeah,
good.
no, I'm just stretching a little in my legs.
Yeah, you can pump your knees a tiny bit.
Okay.
That'll help and breathe. Let it happen here.
Oh, yeah.
I hope that wasn't too much.
No, it was great. And I noticed when you're using your hands to pound on my back a bit, you stay away from the backbone.
Yeah.
Work on both
absolutely. You never
sides.
touch
Yeah.
the backbone.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Don't touch it.
Yep.
Al taught me that. He
Yep.
said it's even though it's one of the strongest places, there's nothing there. There's only bone. Why bother? You know, you want to get the muscles alongside, because this is where all the tension is here, not here.
Where? Say again.
The
Show.
tension is right here.
Yeah.
And not here.
Yeah.
Because that's where the spine is. You don't want to touch the spine. Yeah. Great.
God, I wish we could stay longer.
I wish you could. Well, plan next time to stay longer. You're welcome to stay here. I got plenty of room.
God, I would look forward to it again.
Please do.
I would look forward to it again.
I would love it.
You know,
We could talk more.
we can talk more. Yes.